Hello everybody, it's been a while since my last video, and while I'd like to do some more reviews of different things, I think it's time that I updated the installation of OpenMediaVault video, and I'm planning on making a series of videos to go into lots of different stuff to do with the server software now that I've got used to it. I've been running it for a couple of years. The last video was based on installations of version 1.1, I think it was, and now we're up to 2.1. So quite a few people will find that the screenshots don't match what they're expecting to see, which is why I thought it's time to do a new version. The installation video has been incredibly popular and people have said they found it really useful, so I will be going into quite a lot of detail, and it is quite a long video just because it shows how to do the full install with all the screens that you can expect to see, plus a basic overview, and then finishing off with setting up SSH to access the box, and then an example of how you would do that. So what we're going to do is we'll go to OpenMediaVault and go to the download section. We want the ISOs found here. Okay, and currently version 3 is still in beta or beta, however you want to say it. So we're going to download version 2.1, which is the last known stable version, and it's been stable since around about it's been locked since about January. So at the moment all the plugins, including the extra plugins, are getting they're not getting feature updates, they're more getting fixes, to the best of my knowledge. The big feature updates are coming in version 3, but personally I don't really want to run that until it's stable, and there's a big thing on their website that says that if you do decide to try and run it and anything goes wrong, you are probably going to be on your own with trying to fix that. So to play it safe, we're going to go with the 2.1 version. I've downloaded the AMD 64-bit ISO, which you can see is the more popular of the two. This version does run fine, it's just most people tend to use 64-bit architectures now, so I've downloaded that. I'm also going to pause the video now and start it up to show you the installation process. Okay, so here we have the boot menu, and just click to install. So I want to set the language to English, and then British English. Right, so now I need to name our server, so I'm going to call this OMV VBox. Continue. And I do have a domain, but I'm not going to set it in here because the domain's already set up for my normal server. So I also don't want to say what it is on YouTube, so I'm just going to skip this part. But you could normally put in your domain, so if it was, say, google.com, and then it would remember all of that, but I'm going to skip it. Okay, so here we enter our root password for the system. You can hit enter here and skip it and you won't have a root password, but I like to have one. I'm just going to put, seeing as this isn't a real one, a very simple password. There we go. Now, if you only have one drive in the system, this page won't come up. Okay, but I know this is VirtualBox, but I've also made 2 extra virtual drives so that you can see this section. So I'm going to click continue here, and we need to make sure we click on the correct drive. So this is the drive that I want, and these 2 are just for demonstration purposes later on. So that's the drive I want. Remember, whichever drive you pick, you will not be able to access from the web admin console, so it's fairly locked down. You can access it through SSH, no problem, but you won't be able to just accidentally click on something and wipe it if it's the main drive for the OS. So select that, and now it's going to install the system. Okay, so now just pick where we are, then we get the best mirrors, and you pick whichever mirror you want. For some reason I always go with that one. I don't know why. I'm not behind a proxy, so I don't need to set any proxy addresses in there. Okay, the package manager will now start to configure itself. letting the drive finish off installing. So I didn't get an option for where I wanted to install the bootloader. It just assumes that you're going to put that on the drive, the OS drive, which I haven't got a problem with. So on it goes, and once we're finished, that is it. So it's a very short install to get the base system up. There we go. So this is on VirtualBox, but if I was doing it with USB, obviously reboot, take the USB out, and let it boot back up, and we should end up with a terminal. Okay, so once we've rebooted, we get this screen. It tells us our version up here. You won't have a mouse, that's just because it's in VirtualBox. So we can see we've got 2.1, which is Stoneburner, which at the time is the latest one that you can download. It's not the most recent update though, but it's just the most recent ISO that you can install. And this may be worrying to a lot of people. No interface is available, and that means that it's not properly detected my my Ethernet connection, because I've set this up as a bridge in VirtualBox. When I've done it on my main server, it's worked straight away, but if it for some reason it doesn't, or if you're running it on VirtualBox, I'll show you the command to get that working. So we want to log in as root. Whoops, we need to actually click on the screen. Root, and then put our password in. No, try that again. There we go. And now we can see we get a little bit of information. This happens each time you log on, and somewhere here, oh no, it's up here, sorry. It says here that we can run this OMV first aid. Now if you ever lock yourself out of the web admin portal, you can use this via SSH or just straight into the machine itself if you can connect it to a monitor and a keyboard, and you can reset quite a few different things, as well as set up your Ethernet connection, which is what we're going to use it for now. So if we type in OMV-first aid, there we go, configure network interface. So hit enter. That's detected that I actually have one, so that's good. Hit enter. Don't want to use DHCP version 4 for this interface. Okay. I don't want IPv6. No. And you may or may not want to enable Wake on LAN for the interface. On my actual machine I do, and you just click yes and it just sets some flags so that it'll be able to Wake on LAN if you have relevant plugins installed on other things, or if you want to do that off of another machine. For now I'm just going to click no. You don't get any extra screens or any extra options if you click yes. It's just I don't need it for this example. Okay, so there we go. We should be ready. So now if I type in ifconfig, I can see that my internet address is 192.168.1.134, which is here. So if I load a web browser and put that address in, I should be able to get to my web management console. So I won't need to use any of this anymore. So I'll come back in a minute once I've got all that set up. Okay, so I've loaded up my web browser, and we're just going to go to the web address that was given to us before at the terminal, so on the command line, and we're presented with this. Now the default login is admin, and then the password is OpenMediaVault. Enter. And this is what we're presented with. So it's all installed and we can access it. So we have version 2.1 Stoneburner. We can see what our processor and information is. We can see what services are running. So currently there's nothing running. Everything can be done from this window usually. There's only a couple of things where you may have to SSH into the box to install things like the latest OwnCloud or Nextcloud or things like that, but I'll do separate videos on how to do that. So here we have our general settings. Okay, we can change our admin password. I'm not going to do that now, but it's fairly straightforward. If you want to, well, you should change your login password there. Date and time, hopefully, should be correct. That is correct for me at the moment, so it's detected itself, which is good. We have our network. We can change the host name if you want to. I don't have a domain name on this example. I do on my bare metal installation, and it works fine. We have power management. I've never had to do much in there personally. Monitoring I don't use on mine. Now certificates I'm going to do a separate video for. It's very easy to make your own certificate if you're wanting to use SSL to connect to your box, so that you've got encrypted connections. However, the certificate, you'll always get a warning if you use your own certificate saying that it's not a recognised certificate. Do you want to permanently add this certificate to your browser, etc, etc. There is an easy way of fixing that with Let's Encrypt, which most people have heard of, but there's now a plugin available for OpenMediaVault which will do that for you, and it'll automatically renew your certificate every couple of months. But I'll do a separate video on how to set that up. We have our scheduled jobs, which is just your cron tab basically, but it's a nice GUI version of that, so we can put a command in here and say when it's going to run every day, every month, whatever. Okay. We have our update manager, and as you can see at the moment there are a lot of updates, and the very first thing we should be doing is click everything and then click upgrade. I'm not going to do that now because this is just a demonstration, but that would be the very first thing we would do. And then we have plugins. Now here there's not a lot of plugins, there's more than there used to be. We have our antivirus here, we have OwnCloud, but this is not the latest version of OwnCloud, so just be aware if you're going to use that. It tends to be an old version for stability, but now that OwnCloud's had most of its devs leave and fork into Nextcloud, I'll do a separate video on how to install Nextcloud on the OpenMediaVault box, but there's not currently a plugin for that. I don't really use any of these plugins that are here. Some of them are new. The USB backup one's fairly new to me. I tend to install the extras plugin repo, which I'll show you how to do that again in a separate video. But it's one of the main reasons that I use OpenMediaVault. You can get things like Plex, NZB Drone Sonar, SAB NZB, Couch Potato, so many different plugins, WordPress, loads of things are in there, and it's a fantastic. It's the reason I use OpenMediaVault. It makes it so easy to set things up. Now storage, you can see that I did have several different disks in here, and it's very easy. That shows me what's actually in the machine, but they're not actually being used at the moment. If I wanted to use them, I'd click File Systems, then I would click Create, and then I would pick one of my extra drives. So let's say I picked this one here, and I would label it. So label that my data drive. I can pick how I want to format it, and then click OK. Yes, I want to format it. Done. And then in order to be able to use it, select it. Select it, and then click on Mount. Usually. But for some reason it's not doing it. Let's just refresh the page. And let's come out. Let's just go back in. There we go. And we will click Mount. And now that's mounted. Click Apply. And we now have that drive available for us to use in several of the plugins. This is our installation drive, so you can see there's 7 gigs in total. I'm only using 1 gig for the base install of the machine, which is a fairly small footprint, I think. You can set up things to do with your drives. You can set up smart testing, RAID as well, has full software RAID in there. I'm not going to get into that in this video. I can do a separate one if needs be. We can manage our users in here. We can assign our groups. We have our shared folders should we need to use them. Again, that's beyond the scope of this video, but I can do one on that later on. And then here are the plugins that come installed already. So we have FTP, which I don't currently use. I won't be doing anything on that. NFS, setting up an NFS share, which is quite easy to do. Again, that's the subject for another video. rsync, Okay, nice little GUI for an async job here. Okay, lots and lots of settings in there to go through. Samba, setting up a Samba share for Windows sharing. So enter your workgroup name, enable it. I don't really change many of the other settings. Most of it's fairly straightforward, and once you've gone through this, your file should pop up on your Windows machine. I've never used SNMP, so it's not one for me. And SSH is the thing that I would use to get into my box, and this is the big one to set up. So firstly, we need to enable it. Secondly, the port that we're going to use for SSH. Port 22 is the default one usually in most Linux boxes. However, I like to change it to something different. So even if it's just 2222, just as that extra layer of protection, because if 22 is the default, then any bots on the net that are going to be trying to tap into your machine, they're going to be testing and probing port 22. So it's just one extra layer of security. The biggest one is to turn this off. Okay, permit root login. This will stop you being able to log in as root via an SSH. You can still log in as root if you connect directly to the machine, just plugging in a keyboard and a monitor. You'll still be able to log in. It's just if you're trying to do it remotely, and it's a great idea to turn that off, which would force you to have to log in with your user's credentials, and then you could SU and enter your password for root and get root that way. Just means if anyone did manage to get into your system as the user, they would then have to try and crack a second password to be able to get in as the super user, and usually the user can't do that much if you really lock it down, especially on this system. Most things are performed by root, especially the installs. So if you manage to get in as a normal user, there wouldn't be that much that you can do, so definitely recommend turning that off. The rest of it I tend to use as default. I don't really use a public key actually, so I turn that off. I usually just use password, mainly because I only access it from within my home. I'm not making many connections from outside. And then save, apply. Yes, I want to apply the changes. Okay. I don't use the TFTP plugin either. Then we have our diagnostics, so we can usually see a general overview of the system, which we saw when we first logged in. We can see system information. We can get to all of the logs for the machine so far, which is quite good, and we can filter those as well. And then this last section, services as well. What services are running? Okay, you can't. This makes it look like you can click them to turn them on and off, but actually clicking them doesn't do anything. It just tells you, is it on, and then here, is it running properly? So if this goes red, it means it may think it's on, but there's a problem, and sometimes you have to SSH in to restart the service. Sometimes you just reboot the machine and it works. And then at the bottom here we have information. We can donate to the project. We can get support from the project. The forums tend to be incredibly active and really, really helpful, but don't underestimate the documentation as well. Before I go, I just want to show how to access the box remotely now that we've turned on the SSH. So here's the SSH. I'll just go back to the users group here. So I need to add a user, seeing as I disabled root access and there's no other users on the system. So we're going to add a user. Add myself. Password. I'm going to change this to the bash shell, as that's what I'm used to. And in groups, normally I wouldn't change much here, but we are going to have to add ourselves to the SSH group, otherwise we're never going to be able to get into this thing. So save, and then apply. Okay. Now, if I start a console, terminal, there we go, make that a bit bigger. So SSH, and we change the port, so we have to put -P, port 2222. If your username is different to the username that you're actually using on the system currently, you'll have to type a -L and then what your username would be. Now my username is actually going to be the same, so I don't need that -L, but that would be needed normally. And then just the web address 192.168.134, and hopefully, yep, you might get a message that asks you, do you want to store this? But I've tried to log in already to check it works. So when you get that, you just type YES, and then you'll be presented with the password prompt. Pop in your password. Okay, so this has taken me a couple of attempts because the first time I did it I forgot to add the user to the SSH group, so it wouldn't actually log in. It would come up with the password prompt but could never log in. So now I'm logged into the box. I can switch to the root user, and now it's the same as if I'd actually logged in to the actual box. So if I wanted to, I could run omv-first aid, and I can go through and configure everything that I want to configure there. I'm just going to exit that, and then when I'm done, exit, done. So that saves you having to plug the machine in, because I have my server headless, so this means I can access it anywhere in the house without having to connect up a monitor or anything like that. It makes it much easier, and we will be using this in later videos in order to install some things like OwnCloud, NextCloud, Sonar, stuff like that. So, okay, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video.